Hello, comrades. Whenever I read a horror story, I really want to understand it. The first thing I have to ask myself is why is this a horror story? Plenty of stories have scary things, but they aren't all horror stories. And so when I read The Tomb by H.P. Lovecraft, I thought to myself, why is this a horror story? I think it has to do with desecration. But desecration of what I'm still not quite sure. Whether it is the desecration of life or the desecration of death. The story, as many stories do, begins with a rather odd young man who is very keen on reading and is not very sociable. He spends a lot of time outdoors in the woods, and he comes to be very interested in a particular tomb. He becomes obsessed with it. He becomes very interested in opening it. He discovers that it is the tomb of a family that had died out, but he learns he is actually a distant relative. He is the last heir, the last line in that family. And it becomes an obsession of his. He finds a key in his attic that allows him to open it, and he enters the tomb. He begins to know things that he can't know, things from ages past. He describes a conversation of the graveyard, of accents that were unknown to him, like Puritan accents, and the more refined speech of just 50 years before the story. He can find wine cellars that had been lost for generations, and he begins his nightly journey into the tomb. And he says he can't tell us everything that he did in the tomb, but he changed very profoundly. His manner of speech, his knowledge, he became much more outgoing. He was willing to start singing songs openly from long times past. And he becomes deathly afraid of lightning. And there was an old building that had long since burned down, and in the night, on his way to the tomb, a stormy night, he can see it. And he goes in, and he says he can recognize people, although he would have recognized them better had their faces been rotten. And it is a party of the dead. And there is lightning. And he has a terrible realization that he will die, and he will not be buried in the tomb where he wants to be buried. And he says his soul will not be able to rest until he finds some way, even if he must possess the soul of a living person, to be buried in that tomb. It becomes clear that is what happened. He is not himself. He is another. He is taken over by a spirit. So of course his family thinks he's gone crazy. And he, in his defense, to try and argue his position that he should be buried in that place, that he had been going to the tomb, says that he knew things that were not possible to be known. But they insist that they'd been following him and he'd never gone into the tomb. And so one of his servants goes in and opens the tomb up and sees the name of the soul that is now possessing him. And so the thing I'm wondering is, obviously, this is a horror story. It is supposed to be horrifying. What is so horrifying having your life taken like that? To be taken over, possessed by a dead soul? Or is it to be a restless soul? Was this something not quite spoken in the story? Is it in the subtext when he says that he can't tell us what he was doing in the tomb? In the US, it's becoming ever more common to talk about the sanctity of life. It's part of a political position. When someone starts talking about the sanctity of life, what they mean to say is that they do not believe in the right to abortion. That a woman, no matter how she became pregnant, must give up her bodily autonomy to the baby that is now within her, and that she must give birth to it. Detractors from this position point out that if you die, you do not have to give up your organs. There is a sanctity in death that we respect. We respect the wish of the dead to decide whether to give their organs, where to bury their body, whatever to do with their body. There is an autonomy of body even in death. And reading the story, I have to wonder why. Is it horrifying to not be buried where you'd like to be buried? The darkness is coming in now, so I believe it is time but there are some words I had to look up while reading the story. Prosaic, which is actually a word I found in the monkey's part as well. Verdure, which means greenness. It's a word I could recognize from Latin roots, but didn't know was a word in English. Transmute, which means to transform or to change. Essay, like an essay, it means, in this case, it was a verb, to try. Monomania, I think, is what the kids these days would call a special interest. Bower, which is abode. Uncouth means unfamiliar. Ribald means risque. Charnel refers to a chapel. And roisterer is a party goer. Now, before the darkness comes, if you'd like to talk about the monkey's paw, you can do that over here. I've been talking about different horror stories every day in October, so if that sounds good to you, you can subscribe. But before the darkness goes, good night, good day, good potato.